Hi there, my name is Justin Hibbard. I'm the host of the Why Catholic podcast. Today I want to tell you a story about how a conversation with a Mormon actually led me to explore the Catholic faith. You see, I was on a red-eye flight from Salt Lake City to New Jersey. I had sat in my seat, I had my noise-canceling headphones on, I was ready for my mediocre night of sleep when all of a sudden this bubbly young lady comes and sits down in the middle seat right next to me, and she wanted to ask all the questions and have all the conversations, and she was just so lovely and so kind. And I dialogued with her, and I asked her, "Hey, what brings you to New Jersey?" And she revealed that she was on her way to her year-and-a-half Mormon mission, and she was so excited. So I thought, you know what? I have heard lots about Mormonism from Protestants, but I've really not had a chance to dialogue with a Mormon about their own faith. And I thought, she's on her way to her Mormon mission. This would be a great opportunity to do that. Now, I didn't really tell her that I told her I was a Christian. I didn't really tell her I was a Protestant pastor or an apologist. And I didn't want her to feel intimidated. I didn't want to corner her. I didn't want to embarrass her. I wasn't trying to convert her. I simply wanted to understand more about her background and her faith. And so I asked lots of questions, and she gave me lots of answers, and we dialogued for pretty much the entire flight all night long. I was exhausted when I got off the plane. But one of the things that came up in the middle of our conversation, she used a term that I was unfamiliar with. She said, the Great Apostasy. And I said, you're going to have to explain. What do you mean by that? And she said, well, we believe that after the last of the apostles died, the original apostles, the followers of Jesus, after they died, the church lost its way. It went off the rails, and God took away his blessing, his favor, his priesthood from the church, and he restored it in the 19th century with Joseph Smith and the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. That's the restored church. And I said, I don't know if I can buy that. I said, I have questions. What about Matthew 16:18, where Jesus says, on this rock I will build my church and the gates of Hades will not overcome it? Or Matthew 28:20, where Jesus promises his disciples that he's going to be with them always, even until the very end of the age? Or John 16:13, where Jesus promises the Holy Spirit, and he says, when the Holy Spirit comes, he will guide you into all truth. Are you trying to tell me that Jesus stopped his promise and just kind of put it on hold for 1700 years, or that the church fell into sin and apostasy and the Holy Spirit wasn't able to overcome that? I don't know that I believe that. But in exploring that idea and asking those questions, I also had to ask myself that very same question. What did I believe about this? Because in my perspective, I knew about the book of Acts, I've read the Bible, but then church history got really fuzzy up until the Protestant Reformation in the 1500s. I had studied that. But everything in between, what did the early church believe? So I began reading and reading people like St. Ignatius of Antioch and St. Polycarp of Smyrna, both who were disciples of the original apostles, St. Justin Martyr and St. Irenaeus in the 2nd century. And what I discovered was they were talking about things like the Eucharist, confession, Mass, the offices of priest, bishop, and deacons. And I said, this church that I'm reading about in the early church does not look like the Protestant church. So either the church went off the rails, or maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the early church was the Catholic Church. I came to a conclusion some years later that St. Cardinal John Henry Newman stated, and that is, to be deep in history is to cease to be Protestant. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Take a look at my podcast, Why Catholic? God bless you.